Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the craziest and most shocking Epstein files I've found so far. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content. Just like this. All right, let's go. What we're going to be analyzing today is part of the over 3 million Epstein files that were released. Now, I say part because nobody's had a chance to go through all 3 million, but there are a lot of various documents, journals, emails, pictures that have been found, and we're going to talk about whether or not they are reliable, whether they're unreliable. We're going to talk from a forensic standpoint as to how valuable these various files actually are. Please keep in mind the goal of these videos is to be politically neutral. So if I find information, regardless of which side of the aisle it's on, I'm going to tell you about it, and I'm going to talk about whether or not that information seems reliable. All right, let's just jump right in. The first documents we're going to be looking at are journals from the early 2000s. These journals were written by one of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking victims. They're written in a cipher, actually. They're written in code. I'm going to explain how to decode it, and then we're going to actually read through it. But it mentions a couple of dozen different people by name. Now, we're going to talk about all of those people in a different video because that's just too long. Today, we're just going to talk about the 2 most prominent people that are mentioned. So here's how this cipher works. Here's how the code works. Is you start with the first letter, then you go straight down to the second, then you go up to the next row for the third, down to the fourth, up to the fifth, and so on. You essentially read in a zigzag pattern. It makes for slow reading, but it's not that hard to decipher. Fortunately, because all of this was presented by an attorney, the attorney went ahead and deciphered it all for us. Before we actually read through what this says and we talk about some of the names that are mentioned, I do want to point out, in terms of reliability, the claims made in these journals are extreme. This individual claims that she actually had Jeffrey Epstein's baby, that she was pregnant with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's baby. So whether or not you believe that this person is connected to reality or whether or not you believe they're a true victim, I think there's probably going to be a lot of debate about that because the claims that are made in it are wild, but maybe provable claims. I can't say for sure. All I can say is what I have in front of me. So we're going to talk about and decipher specifically who she claimed that she came in contact with. Now, the page that we just looked at, here's specifically what it says. It doesn't matter how far away you are, no matter how good you think they are, even the old president, they will get you. He should have been thinking of Chelsea, gross, in a plane, on a yacht in New York, in D.C., at the Vineyard, on the island, in Palm Beach. It doesn't matter. So now going back to the page that's written in cipher, if you look at it in that up-down fashion, you can read it yourself. But this obviously is talking about President Bill Clinton. Now, when you see it, it sounds vague. She's not mentioning specific behaviors, specific activities. Now, according to her attorney, anytime she says gross or yuck or uses a word like that, that indicates inappropriate behavior on the part of the person she's referring to. So in this, she is claiming that she is a victim of Bill Clinton. Now we're going to look at another page. I'm going to read it to you first, then we're going to look at the page in context, and that will help you understand who she's referring to. I guess it's a royal thing. Gross. Andrew is like his brother in this way. Blank should not brag because that was yucky. Does this lady know you can't have any dignity if you've been with him? I know I have none. Only Skittles. Now, with that name blurred out, we don't really know who she's talking about. However, if we go down and you see it in context, it's pretty obvious. So now that we're back on this page, this is the name, the one that's blacked out right there that I was referring to. Now, in context, it's pretty obvious who she's referring to. If you look at the bottom right here, you see the name Ivana Trump. I'm going to read through this, and you'll see why it really can't be anybody but President Trump that she's referring to right here. Now, if you look at the number of blocks that are blacked out, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Trump. So obviously the name fits in terms of the number of letters. But let's read it out in context, and let's look at all of this one more time. So if we're to assume this is the name Trump, it would say, Trump should not brag because that was yucky. And then down here it says, does this lady know you can't have any dignity if you've been with him? Obviously, right next to that is the name Ivana Trump, the name of President Trump's ex-wife. And then after that it says, I know I have none, only Skittles. So this is a very specific accusation by one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims saying that she was also victimized by President Trump. Now, as I said before, the goal of this is not to be political. I'm just telling you exactly what this says. Now, whether or not you think it is reliable is another question. Now, based on everything we know about this victim, there's no reason to believe that her claims about Jeffrey Epstein are untrue, but there's still going to be questions about her credibility regarding former President Bill Clinton as well as President Trump because of some of the claims that she makes in there that are so extreme. Now, I think it can be proven that she was in fact with Jeffrey Epstein during these years. But she also claims to have been impregnated by him. She claimed to have had his and Ghislaine Maxwell's baby. There are a lot of very intense and extreme claims that she makes. And for some people, without those aspects being proven, are not going to believe that these journals are credible. So as a forensic expert, if I was to review something like this, I would need additional information that corroborates more aspects of this. Now, if that can be done, then I think that you might have some very credible claims on your hand. But without additional information, without additional resources, we can't say definitively whether or not these claims are credible, because some of the claims and some of the statements are so extreme. Now we're going to look at some of the pictures that were released in this most recent data set. I want you to keep in mind, this is over 3 million documents. Finding these pictures and finding what pictures are available is extremely difficult, because you can't just download one big file that has all the pictures in there. You have to find them by searching, and trying to search for 3 million different documents is very, very challenging. But I will show you the most interesting ones that I found. Now, the reason I start with this one is because he is obsessed with massage. Whether it's him getting massage or other people getting it, he is absolutely obsessed with this idea. So you're going to see massage come up over and over and over again. I think that his life was built around fantasies related to massage. I really do. There's a number of pictures of him doing silly things like this, like making duck faces and mugging at the camera. Now, one thing that's very consistent throughout the Epstein files is that through each release, there's always pictures of celebrities. Now, this right here is Brett Ratner. He's directed a lot of movies, just recently directed a documentary about Melania Trump. Now, Brett Ratner has been very clear that he didn't know Jeffrey Epstein that well. These do seem like strange pictures to take with somebody that you're not that familiar with, but Jeffrey Epstein has a lot of pictures with a lot of famous people. Now, down here, I thought these were interesting. This is him going to some sort of equestrian event, watching horses jump and all that, looking very happy, seeming to always be posing for the camera in a very similar way. It's interesting to me that he was still out and about, always doing these things well after he had been convicted in 2008. This is something I think is interesting and disturbing. So if you look at Jeffrey Epstein right here, he's got his hand on somebody's leg, and you can see the way that he's gripping it. So to look at the body language right here, this to me screams control, because you look, he's got his hand pressed hard on this person's leg, but he's not leaning towards them. There's no affection. There's no warmth. This is someone who wants control, who sees people as objects. Now, if you look right here, this person is now holding his hand. He's smiling, but still the body language doesn't suggest a connection between them. This is somebody that I think that he wants to have control over. So if you look at the way that he does this, he continues to do it in other pictures. He just constantly keeps his hands on other people. And this is just a very, very small sample of this. He does this so much, I just didn't feel like putting a ton of these pictures in there because they're just kind of gross. So if you look at the body language, though, this really is someone who is not connected with the person that they are apparently trying to be connected with. Now, right here, this is him having some sort of academic lunch. Now, he is also, I said he was obsessed with massage. He's also obsessed with being an intellectual. So he likes to surround him with people that he thinks are smart. He does do these kinds of functions. He does these things where he is trying to connect with other academics, scientists, and so forth, because I think he really wants to be one. But if you read his emails, if you look at the way that he speaks, he does not come across as quite as intelligent as I think he wants to. Now, here's some pictures of him playing ping pong. I just thought it was sort of strange and interesting, because you have someone that is always documenting everything he does. Keep in mind, he's not the one taking these pictures. Somebody else has got to have a camera and is constantly taking pictures of him with every last thing. And there's no shortage of pictures of him in weird poses, that's for sure. Here's him at some sort of Studio 54 celebration. I think that was the theme of this party right here. Now we're getting back to some pictures that we looked at actually in another video, because they re-released them with this document dump, but some of them just fascinate me, especially him and Bill Clinton. Look at the just sheer joy of Bill Clinton through these. He's having the time of his life. He's jumping around, having fun with everybody. He just has a spring in his step. His time with Jeffrey Epstein, I think, is about as good a time as he has ever had with anybody. And so when he says, I don't know the guy, we went to Africa one time and that was it, or he makes these excuses that I don't really know him, I just rode on his plane for convenience. None of that seems true at all when we look at the pictures of them together. And as we continue to look through these pictures, once again, massage. He's so obsessed with massage. He has so many pictures of massage. There he is with Michael Jackson. I think this is an old one, but I still think it's a really strange one. Michael Jackson not looking all that particularly pleased to be standing with Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, Michael Jackson doesn't smile in any pictures. He never looks happy to be with anyone. But I do think it's interesting the way they pose together in this picture. You can see both of them have their hands in their pockets. There doesn't seem to be a lot of comfort in this picture here for anybody. Now, what this looks like to me, and maybe somebody else could clarify, to me, this looks like Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell standing with Prince Andrew from an old picture. I think that's what this is from a long time ago. I believe that that's Prince Andrew in the middle there. If anybody can clarify that, let me know. And here's Prince Andrew standing over a woman's body with no context. This is a particularly strange picture because if we look at the expression on his face, it's almost a look of surprise. They're not smiling. They're not laughing. Nobody seems to be having fun. So why they're documenting this in the way they are, it's all very peculiar. And Prince Andrew has said in the past, I don't like to pose for pictures because of my position. I would never do such things. But right here, he's posing in the strangest of pictures. So his behavior around Epstein really seemed to be unique and bizarre. Now we're going to look at an email Jeffrey Epstein sent with a story about President Trump. Now here's what Jeffrey Epstein said. Read the feed, re my airplane logs and Hawaiian Tropic contest. I have them ask my houseman about Donald almost walking through the door, leaving his nose print on the glass as young women were swimming in the pool, and he was so focused he walked straight into the door. And if you look through his emails, Jeffrey Epstein has a long history of comments like this. We're going to be doing an entire video just dedicated to all the times President Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files, so we're just talking about a little bit of it today, but these are some of the times it stands out. So here's another similar exchange with the same person. Landon Thomas Jr. said, you be the judge. Wasn't there a time where he at least completed sentences? And then Epstein says, no, he was always stupid. So this goes to show Jeffrey Epstein really has a strong dislike and really does have a tendency to mock President Trump. That is something that he's done very, very consistently. Now, here's something that comes up a couple of times throughout this. We're going to see this again. But this is somebody referring to freezing eggs. So in other words, freezing the eggs of women that are associated with Jeffrey Epstein. So if you look at this section right here, although the name is fully redacted, I'm trying to hire a lawyer for a green card, file a patent application, pay credit cards, get plane fixed, and help freeze eggs soon. Is it possible to get an advance on future doubles to help move things along? I can offer continuing education for Russian girlfriends. I highlighted this for the freezing eggs aspect of it because it's quite peculiar. And it also shows there was a connection with Russia. That's something that other people have talked about. Once again, there's a lot of information on this. We're not going to get deep into all of his connections to Russia, but there's so much in these 3 million files. Now, these are emails that are allegedly from Sarah Ferguson, who was formerly married to Prince Andrew. They divorced in 1996, I believe. And this is something that Sarah Ferguson sent to Jeffrey Epstein. Don't know if you are still on this, but heard from the Duke that you have a baby boy, and the Duke being Prince Andrew. Even though you never kept in touch, I am still here with love, friendship, and congratulations on your baby boy, Sarah. So this backs up the idea that Jeffrey Epstein may in fact have a child, may lend credibility to those journals earlier, or maybe it's just a coincidence that he in fact had a love child or had a child with somebody, because it seems to be that he told Prince Andrew that he has a child. Now, when I talk about credibility, this is extremely credible, particularly if Sarah Ferguson said, Prince Andrew told me this, there would be no reason for Jeffrey Epstein to lie about the fact that he in fact has a child. And then if we look at the following email that she also sent, you have disappeared. I did not even know you were having a baby. It was so crystal clear to me that you were only friends with me to get to Andrew, and that really hurt me deeply, more than you will know. So this is somebody who really truly is hurt by Jeffrey Epstein. This is someone who really wanted a connection with him and still feels some kinship with him. Now we're into some really interesting stuff. This right here is written by an inmate from the night of Jeffrey Epstein's death. All this information was compiled together by the Office of the Inspector General. A report was written on how Jeffrey Epstein died and where they found problems and so on and so forth. Some of the information I'm about to read was never discussed in that, and I think it's pretty important. Whether or not you think it is reliable, once again, whether or not this is credible, I'm sure there may be questions about that, but the claims that were made in this should have been reported elsewhere. So let's look at what he says the night Epstein died. Now, he talks about all of the different guards and all of the different people, all the different correctional officers and so forth, describes what life is like in the special housing unit, the SHU. That's where Jeffrey Epstein was housed. I'm going to give you a brief explanation of what is reported to have happened that night so you can understand why this is an issue. So the night of Jeffrey Epstein's death, the correctional officers did not do their rounds. They didn't count all of the different inmates. That's something they're supposed to do. They have to go in and lay eyes on them on a very regular basis, and they just weren't doing it. And so the fact that they didn't do that has been attributed to them just being lazy. But this makes it sound a little bit different. So this is the night Epstein died. Fed dinner by Noel, another officer. Now, Noel and Thomas were the two correctional officers that were on duty that night. Never got trays taken out. She came by around 10 to do the count, asked for lights off, and did it. Around 12, everyone was kicking their door, yelling, asking for lights to be turned off. New officer comes in, and she being Noelle, she told them not to do the rounds. The idea that she told people not to do the rounds, that is a piece of information that was never included elsewhere. That seems strange to me. That seems highly unusual. If we're to go down here, this is another thing that sounds incredibly, incredibly strange. When they were walking through with breakfast, Lieutenant Blank served food. Dude said, "You killed that dude." She said, "If he is dead, we're going to cover it up. And he's going to have an alibi, my officer." There are continuing to be really wild statements that we have not yet heard. I'm going to be compiling all of this, once again, for another video to analyze more about what happened the night of Jeffrey Epstein's death. But I had not heard any of this before. None of this was included in the Inspector General's report. Now we're going to look at an interview that one of the employees at the prison had with the FBI. Now, according to this employee, the chief medical examiner arrived to transport Epstein to their facility after he was dead. Due to the large news media presence outside the MCC, which is the prison, a male OCME official called and said he would be arriving at the loading dock with a black vehicle. In order to thwart the media, Blank and Blank used boxes and sheets to create what appeared to be a human body, which was put into the white OCME vehicle, which the press followed, allowing the black vehicle to depart unnoticed with Epstein's body. Now, does that mean that there was some crazy bait and switch and that there's some big conspiracy? Not necessarily, but it does show that they were doing things behind the scenes that nobody knew about, that there was, in fact, deception going on, assuming this is actually true, and that there is more to this than we have ever heard. This is very strange. Now, he's not claiming that Epstein was replaced by somebody else. He was just saying that to avoid the media, they made a fake body, basically. But that is still an utterly wild claim. And this is, as I said, this is from an FBI interview. Now, this stands out just because it's so peculiar. So Jeffrey Epstein sent an email that said, "Can you think of anyone in India, China, Japan, etc. that might want the endorsement of Leonardo DiCaprio, Russia, etc., cars, etc. He's looking for non-U.S. products to endorse to make some money." This was back in 2009. Leonardo DiCaprio wasn't exactly hurting for jobs at the time. So if this is actually true, it's incredibly strange. Jeffrey Epstein's representation and connection with celebrities almost makes no sense. So to me, this was once again very shocking, and I have no reason to question it. It doesn't read like a joke. It sounds like something that he was actually trying to get information on. Now, here's one I've seen a number of people talk about. So this is an email from somebody whose name was redacted to Jeffrey Epstein. "This is better than a Chinese cookie. See attached. Let's go for pizza and grape soda again. No one else can understand. Go no." Now, the reason people have focused on this is because it talks about pizza. There have been a number of people who believe that these are coded messages, that they are in fact referring to people, not food. Now, whether or not that's true, if you look up pizza in the files, if you look at how many times it's mentioned, it is talked about a lot. And I mean a lot. But here's the challenge with claims like pizza and grape soda specifically. If we scroll down to an exchange he does have with one of his friends, there's one of his friends who he has numerous conversations referring to pizza and grape soda. But in one of their pictures, in a very literal sense, he sends a picture of pizza and grape soda. Now, does that mean that it still can't be representing something else? No, of course not. But in a literal sense, it's not purely used as code. He does, in fact, actually have a picture of the two together. It seems incredibly strange, a very bizarre combination. But when it comes to trying to prove something like this, if you're saying, well, people need to investigate it, these are the kinds of things, having pictures like this, that will make law enforcement go, it's not worth it. They were being literal, so we're not going to follow that. So sending pictures like this is going to make people take all of pizza claims far less seriously. Now, if you look up the term whoops, there are a bunch of strange emails that come up. Here's one of them. So Jeffrey Epstein was sent the message, Mary Kennedy was found dead in her backyard. His response, whoops, just an inhumane, awful way to respond. People have speculated, similar to Jeffrey Epstein, that her death was not, in fact, how it was reported, because they reportedly died in the same fashion. His response, whoops, makes it sound like somehow he was involved, like, oops, that was an accident, like somehow he had something to do with it. I don't take it that literally. I just think that he's a cold psychopath, and that's why he says it that way. But he does say whoops in a lot of different circumstances that also sound almost incriminating. Here's another great example of this, and this one is much more clear. I give you permission to kill him. He is apparently with blank. He lied to you, and he lied to me. Whoops is Jeffrey Epstein's response. No one else will lie to you and get away with it from me. No one. Whoops is correct. Now, when you read that, my initial reaction, what it pops into my mind, is that it's two men that are exchanging information like this, that it's two men that are talking to each other. What's been reported by someone else, and there's a different email where you can see a little bit of the name, it is a female's name, actually, that is behind this. And that is incredibly strange. Somehow that makes it feel more sinister. It makes it feel far more literal. I take this email very, very literally, in fact. I think that this was, when she said, I give you permission to kill him, to me, that sounds like that's being quite literal. There are other emails that seem far less literal to me. Like this one right here. So this was between Jeffrey Epstein and someone else that said, our spy was captured after completing her mission. The reply was, did you torture her? I'm assuming that this is some sort of creepy role play. That's how I read that. I don't take that as literal torture. I take this as some sort of weird sort of role play that him and some other people that were on the island were probably playing. Now, here's Jeffrey Epstein interacting with Elon Musk. So Jeffrey Epstein sent a message that said, any plans for New York, the opening of the General Assembly has many interesting people coming to my house. Elon Musk responded, I run and lead product design engineering for two complicated companies. Moreover, SpaceX is about to launch what is arguably the most advanced rocket in history. Flying to New York to see UN diplomats do nothing would be an unwise use of my time. Jeffrey Epstein replied, do you think I'm retarded? Just kidding. There's no one over 25 and all very cute, which goes to show that when he's messaging people, when he's inviting them, it is under the pretense of partying. It is under the pretense of the women that he's going to be around. None of it really has that much to do with connecting over academia or diplomats or any of that stuff. So you can see with the way that he interacts, with the way that he talks, it is all about trying to show what he has, showing all the women that he has collected, as disgusting a way as that is to put it. I think that's the way he would have seen it. Now, here's another whoops that I thought was interesting. The subject is, he deserves it. This is from Jeffrey Epstein to Jean-Luc Brunel, who is an associate of his. It just says, whoops, that's it. And the subject is, he deserves it. It does seem to be there is a specific theme with the term whoops. I thought this was interesting. So this is alarm. Bill Gates on the 23rd, October 23rd, 2011. It shows they were still interacting all the way as late as 2011. Here's another one that I found interesting. All it was attachment, subject, beauty and brains, but it was from Deepak Chopra all the way in 2017. Jeffrey Epstein has kept so many high-profile names close to him over all of these years. And this is from Deepak Chopra, so it's not like Jeffrey Epstein sent it to him. It was Deepak Chopra sending it to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, here's another strange one. This is Jeffrey Epstein interacting with his physician. And he asked the physician, are you also the person these girls should go to freeze eggs or rosin wax? Which hospital are you associated with and what group? So it goes back to the idea of freezing eggs, that somehow that is something that he's taken on as his responsibility, why he wants to help them do it. I really don't know what that's about, but it is something that's come up over and over again. Inevitably, well, I'm just going to sort of earmark that and keep that for future videos. Here's another interaction between Jeffrey Epstein and his physician. He seems to be obsessed with one of his lips swelling up, so he sends him all of these odd pictures of him doing all sorts of different facial expressions. And if we continue to go down, I don't know whether or not this is related, but it turns out that he was gonorrhea positive. So it seems like that he has to go through several rounds of antibiotics to try to get rid of it as well. And he does seem to be on a pretty heavy dose of medication, talks about the treatment for gonorrhea. And he does talk with his physician frequently about these kinds of problems. Because you have to just think about the sheer volume of people that he was with. All right, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. Hopefully this is helping you better understand more of the strange, bizarre, and shocking Epstein files that we have seen so far. There is so much more to cover. I'm doing videos on President Trump. I'm doing videos on Prince Andrew. There are many, many videos that I'm going to be doing and analyzing more and more information, particularly the more we discover, because there has to be a whole lot more. The surface is only just now getting scratched with all of these files. But what we're seeing is the profile of someone who is truly disgusting and deranged. The things that Jeffrey Epstein did, there truly seems to be no limit to his depravity. If you have any other thoughts about this, or if there's anything else you want me to analyze, please let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.